and let's get after it here. And it's really super windy today, guys. So I've already had the power kind of flicker a little bit once. So if it goes out, I apologize, and I'll get back in. Okay. So that may be something we have to deal with today. All right. Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Physiology. What is it? If you took anatomy class, then hell, you already know what it is, right? It's the study of function. If you were in certain individuals' human anatomy classes, you probably hinted at a lot of this stuff and looked at functions of things and how those things interact. By things, I mean structures. How those structures interact and what that means to the overall function of things. So, some of you have probably had all this already, but obviously we're going to dive a heck of a lot more into these things. Physiology is important because it allows us to understand why structures are the way they are, why they're shaped a certain way. You see nothing better as a better example than tissue. We have several different types of tissue, right? All of it geared for a specific type of function. Hell, when we look at epithelial tissue, we have different shapes, and each of it's geared to a specific type of function. Diffusion or secretion, increased absorption by just putting little hairs on the surface of it, protection. So all of these structures that you learned in the previous, you're going to look at them here and look at the functions and see kind of what is exactly going on for all this stuff. It helps to explain a lot of different things that are happening inside your body, which is fantastic to know, scary to know, especially when you know how things interact within a cell or even bigger within a tissue. Knowing how drugs interact and what that means for you, or certain drugs and medications, understanding receptors and specific shape receptors and where those receptors are located. You have some in the brain, you have some, same shape, same docking mechanism found in the digestive tract. So a lot of medication and a lot of neurotransmitters that get released in the brain also have an effect down in the digestive tract. So any medication that can affect brain physiology can ultimately affect digestive physiology in some cases. So, understanding all that whatnot allows you to really be cognizant of the stuff that you put in your body and what that truly can cause for you. Obviously, all of this is derived from scientific experiments. And I think there's a slide there that talks about the scientific method. If you don't know the scientific method by 210, I honestly don't think there's any hope for you. I'll list it out, but I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, I know, dude. There are a number of subsets of physiology. There's, kidney phys, respiratory phys, vasculature physiology. There's a number of different types of physiology. We're obviously going to talk about all those, but there's pathophys. We'll talk about some disease processes or some injury situations that can ultimately affect physiology or kickstart physiological processes to starting. An example of something like that would be just the blood clotting process, right? You have the blood clotting process. As soon as you cut those epithelial cells in the skin or in the blood vessel, it releases chemicals. And the cells around in the body recognize those chemicals, and it starts a positive feedback mechanism that causes the blood to clot. Gets to a certain point, and then it's a negative feedback loop that says, okay, stop. But it's interesting because it only affects that region, right? It doesn't affect the global area. So if you cut yourself in your forearm, it's only affecting that little bitty area in that part of the forearm. It shouldn't cause clotting anywhere else. And if it does, then you have some kind of disease manifestation, which is a side effect of certain drugs, certain medications, cancer drugs being kind of the biggest culprit of those. There's comparative phys, and we are not going to dive into that. The book dives into a little bit, but we are not getting into that. This is not a ZO class, okay? We are just looking at the functions inside us. Okay. We can compare physiology of certain animals because it is very similar to what happens in us. But we're not going to dive into that. Okay. We're not going to dive into pharmaceutical development. There's the scientific method. I promise. There it is. But I don't want to hold your hand through it. You guys know to make observations and form an educated guess. Design an experiment to test those observations. Analyze the data. Collect it. Analyze it. Do it again. 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 What makes good research? Something that can be specifically measured. Okay. You can see a specific thing. You can measure a specific thing. You can give it specific units. One of the biggest misses always when it comes to lab is units. Okay. That is the biggest roadblock to getting perfect points, whether that be in person in lab or on these labs that you're going to be doing online. Okay. Wrong units is always a big problem. Okay. So that's going to be a big thing that you're just paying attention to. Remember your units and what you're physically trying to measure. Have an experimental group. Okay. Where you can measure that thing. And a control group to see that it truly did have a statistical positive or negative effect, which you'll use to determine if your hypothesis was correct or incorrect. Do a statistical analysis, review it for everybody to yell at you and tell you what you did wrong in peer-reviewed journal. Pretty basic Bio 101 stuff there.